Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better? I hope that it functions now. Hmm. Yeah. Hello. I hope that the sound quality is better now. Please confirm if it is. Is it better now? Hello. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. So yeah, so we have overcome the technical issues, and yeah, and let us come back to the question of what is Ukrainian offensive doing around Avdiivka and why Avdiivka is so important. As I told you, the Avdiivka is a port of the eastern offensive of the Russians, which consists out of the directions. The cities are very close to each other: Bakhmut, Marinka, Avdiivka. It is all the suburbia of Donetsk, very densely populated area before the full-scale invasion, before the war. A lot of structures, a lot of buildings, small buildings, bigger buildings, multi-story houses, small houses, private sector as they call it, like the small houses where one family lives, garages, technical buildings, and factories. And factories are extremely important, as in Avdiivka, the Ukrainian defensive position is mostly in Avdiivka Koksahim, Avdiivka coal chemistry plant. And it is something of a smaller scale compared to Azovstal. So it's also an industrial complex with a lot of huge rooms, a lot of underground constructions, a lot of concrete, steel, etc. So what the Russians tried, the Russians obviously wanted to demonstrate some success. Especially important for Vladimir Putin, as Vladimir Putin has his so-called presidential elections, which of course are not elections, but just like a sign of acclamation by the public. And they have them in spring. And before spring, Vladimir Putin wants to demonstrate his population that he has achieved some great victory. And because, of course, Russians don't know the geography of Ukraine, they just need to be presented some names. And it says, okay, like Marinka, we have got it, actually totally destroyed. Bakhmut, we have got it, totally destroyed. So now we take Avdiivka. And for the Ukrainian army, the defense of Avdiivka is important because they can stop the Russian offensive and they can neutralize the Russian manpower. They can destroy Russian tanks, they can destroy Russian infantry, they can do with the Russians just sterilize, so to call their army, just like destroy. So what we did, we have raised donations for the Ukrainian army, for the 47th Brigade, which fought before in Zaporizhia, around Zaporizhia, liberated Robotyne, and now is fighting in Avdiivka. And we have raised for them already like 150,000 in September, October, and now about 70,000 in December. And this 70,000 euro, we have bought night vision drones for that. And night vision drones are extremely important to provide the army with a chance to see the area in the night, to see where their wounded are, how they can evacuate them, where they have like some problems, etc., etc. And drones are practically eyes and ears of every and each army unit. And drones get destroyed regularly by the Russian electronic warfare. That's why they need to be replaced all the time. That's why you need to bring them. And here I want to go into details as much as I may, not disclosing like sensitive information, but talking about what I have seen there with the soldiers. And I was very privileged. I could spend a day with them. Like I came in the evening. I spent evening with them. I slept in their rooms where they are being dislocated, and then we had like discussions in the morning. I visited several positions of the brigade where they do their stuff, and that was extremely interesting because first, like all the soldiers, they are very young. They're very young. Like a soldier who's my permanent contact is about like 22 years old, and like others are not much older. Some of them are younger, and they are all high motivated. They most of them, they are either volunteers or they have been conscripted, but they had nothing against it. They wanted to go into the army, and they were selected by their skills. Like some of them are electrician, like engineers, mathematicians, computer scientists, etc., and they know how to deal with the drones. And what they explained me about the drones is really, really interesting. So first they said that how does it work? Like how we say that the Russians, they jam the drones, but what happens practically? Effectively, when the drone starts, the operator of the drone has constant contact with the drone and can see what the drone sees in real time. So for the Russians, it is important either to locate the operator of the drone and hit him with artillery. And that's why when the drone comes to the Ukrainian army, the first thing they do, they wipe out the software and install their own software to prevent the chance to locate the position of the drone operator, because the factory installed IT allows people with the right IT to identify the geo position of the operator and hit him with mortar or artillery shot. Then what they do, they start to extend antennas. So they don't want the antenna which operator uses, that this antenna is too close to the operator. It needs to be a bit further from the operator. So when the attack comes, the attack comes to the place where antenna is, not where the operator is. But here they have limitations of the distance. You cannot put it like 50-meter away or 100-meter away because of the strength of the signal. Like, I'm not an expert here, but they explain me that the frequencies do not allow to have this antenna too long. And then they use the drone. Then the second problem comes, because along the whole front line, the GPS doesn't work. Like, you just cannot use GPS because it is jammed. So in a normal situation, when the drone loses contact, radio contact with the operator, the drones knows its position, GPS position. The drone also knows the GPS position from where it started, and the drone just can fly back to the position. But it cannot on the front line because GPS is jammed by the Russians. Ukrainians also jam it, but like just imagine that the drone like went over the Russian position. So GPS is jammed. It cannot come back. So what the Russians do, okay, what the drone can do in this situation, it either can just wait for a moment in the air, like for 1 minute, 2 minutes, in a hope that the radio contact will be restored. It doesn't happen because it is not lost because of some like weather conditions. It is like jammed. The second idea was like it flies left and right, finding like the better connection. Cannot happen, and then it can just slowly come down because it doesn't want to hurt anyone, and then it is lost forever. So that's how the drones get lost. And what the Russians do, they're really sophisticated in jamming. And the operators told me stories like the Russians have a jamming station. And when you fly with your drone, normally you see, okay, the signal is getting lower and lower. You have problems. Okay, maybe I'm entering the jammed area. Then the drone, I order the drone fly back, and then the connection is restored. But the Russians, they don't have it all the time. When they see that the drone's approaching, they just wait, and then they turn on the jamming device when the drone is already in the field of 100% jamming, and then the drone has no chance to come back. And then, like in this case, like 5,000 or 7,000 euro drone is lost, and that's of course painful. But that is what the war is. Another problem is, for example, that some drones are very fragile. And fragile means that when they land on the ground, when the operator is not skilled enough, it can just crash the drone by hard landing. And then once again, if 5,000 drone is get destroyed. And what the Ukrainians do, they enforce the structure of the drone with like some super glue, with some like additional coating, etc. They make these wings of the drones, these four legs of the drones with the propeller stronger. And that is what they do. They have workshops where they produce their own drones from the parts they buy at AliExpress, and they produce FPV drones, not the thermal camera vision drones, surveillance drones, but FPV drones, kamikaze drones. And then, like, I entered like a room where one soldier of the brigade is sitting, and he has a whole boxes of grenades or of RPG warheads or of other things like C4 or TNT, etc. And the only thing what he was doing, he was like creating with the 3D printed tails. He created the bomblets for the FPV drones. And that is what was he doing. And then I asked the soldiers, like, there was the deficit of the 155 millimeter shells. And we know that the United States stopped providing Ukraine with 155 artillery shells since months, and Germany and France didn't have enough shells to replace this gap. And how are they doing in this situation? They cannot hit the Russians with artillery shells they don't have, right? And they said, well, like a month or two ago, the situation was really severe because they couldn't replace anything. Like they couldn't replace the missing shells with anything. But now they have increased the production of FPV drones, and the FPV drones are actually making the job of 155 artillery shells. And that was amazing to see because, like, they really boosted their own production on the territory of the brigade. They produced their own weaponry from actually the devices which were not designed for that, like the German grenades for automatic grenade launchers, or like the bricks of C4, or like they use the tracer bullets, like 12.7 millimeter caliber machine gun tracer bullets. They just took the tracer part and use it as the fuse for the bomblets. And that is very sophisticated job which they do. And they say, okay, we can do it now, not without shells. Like with the shells, it would be, of course, much better. But with these improvised FPV drones, they could do it much better than before. And when I talked to them, they were all like in a good mood. They were really like sure that they can still hold Avdiivka and can hold Avdiivka coke coal plant. And it is really a very moving feeling when, like, you sleep at night on a bank, and you know that you need to get to wake up at 7, because at 7 a soldier comes from Avdiivka coal plant back from 24 hours shift, and he needs a sleep, and you're actually occupying his bank. And so that is what happened in my case. Like at 7, a soldier came and said, oh, like, hi, good morning. And said, oh, okay, I have occupied your bank, so like take take this place, and I will go and sleep in the car further. Yeah. So the finalizing this port, the mood of the soldiers is good. They know what they do. They have food, they have ammunition, they have creativity, and they know that they can protect this area, and they use their position, their high ground, to destroy Russian waves. When the Russians, when they want to attack the Avdiivka coal plant, they need to cross like fields. They need to be exposed to the Ukrainian fire, and then the Ukrainians just eliminate these waves. So then I think that this is enough about Avdiivka. Yeah. One funny situation was it was pretty easier to go there by car, and much easier than to go back, because when you go there by car, the whole way from Kyiv to Avdiivka is about like 700 kilometers, and I've got only one checkpoint when you leave Dnipro region and enter Donetsk region, and it was in the night, and it's a nasty feeling when you drive without any street lights, etc., and the road is in not perfect condition because tanks are using this road, and sometimes you see a tank left or right, you see like some military equipment, then you see like on horizon, I don't know if it was HIMARS. I don't think it was HIMARS. I think it was like air defense, but missiles like come into the air, and nothing more. And then you come to a checkpoint, and the soldier stops you, and they ask like, "Where are you going?" And they said like, "Do you have any alcohol with you?" And then I realized that it is forbidden to bring alcohol into war zone. I said, "No, I don't have." Like, what do you bring? And the soldier said, "Yeah, I see that the new people come. Yeah, hello, hi Yulia, great to see you here." And the soldiers asked like, "What do you bring?" I said like, "I bring drones." Yeah, I was soldier. No, I'm volunteer. I said, okay, like then just drive through. And then it was the only checkpoint. But when you go back, you come like every 50 kilometers you have a checkpoint, and that is of course understandable, because they want to check like, what do you bring like weapons or something. Like, the Ukrainians really take this security and safety issue very seriously. They really control your course, what you bring, what comes back into the country from the front line, etc. Okay, so my next stop there in Ukraine was Kherson region in the south. And Kherson region was liberated up to the Dnipro River, like this, the north bank of Kherson region, including the city of Kherson itself, was liberated in November 22. And the Ukrainian army stopped practically at the Dnipro River, and they were staying there until June last year, or June 23, when the Russians destroyed the Novakhovka power plant dam. And what did it mean? Like, we all remember all these pictures of flooded territories, etc. Novakhovka water reservoir is 3 times larger on its square than the Lake Constance, the biggest lake in Europe. And all this water NOS came down and has flooded a lot of villages, and it was a really, really terrible situation when the Russians didn't let people with Ukrainian passports to evacuate. They installed checkpoints and forced people with Ukrainian passports to stay in the flooded area. We don't know until now how many people died. I don't think we will ever know that, because many corpses have been flushed down into the sea. But the number of victims is clearly 4 digits, like some thousands of people have died, maybe tens of thousands, we don't know. But what happened after the Novakhovka water reservoir disappeared? What happened is that the whole this area has turned into a huge piece of okay, there are interesting effects, a piece of land. And we need to understand that the Dnipro River before the Kakhovka Dam has been installed in early 1950s, had like it flew through a pretty flat territory, what the Ukrainians called a great meadow or a great grassland. And Dnipro River was very curvy with a lot of small lakes and like small streets, etc. And this region was the region of Zaporizhia Cossacks. They have installed their camps there, they had their villages there, churches, etc. 300 years of existence of Zaporizhia Cossacks happened actually in this area, which have been flooded in 1950s. So now when this area was relieved from the water, and the water reservoir was not that deep, it was like in average 3-5 meters deep. So it wasn't a huge lake according to the depth. It was a pretty flat area which had been flooded for the level of, let me say, 3-5 top 10 meters. And when all this water went away, what came from this area? Old villages, churches, all the cultural artifacts have been revealed. I visited one of the villages on the shore of Novakhovka water reservoir. I talked to the city major, and he's a historian and his education said like I could miss opportunity. I just went to this area, and every time I came back with something with me. He found like old artifacts, the Cossack sabers, the Cossack old guns, cannons, like some crosses, everything which accompanied the life of people for many generations was revealed from this water. I personally took an opportunity to walk like for 5 minutes around this area, and I found an old horse show there. Like it was just laying around. So you just really go there, you find there. What was not comfortable is that the whole this area is being under Russian fire control. So the Russians use the drones which fly over this territory. They use artillery shellings, and they can hit you with a sniper fire. So the distance between the two shores is between, let me say, 3 miles, maybe 2 miles, and let me say 15 miles. In the most, like in the biggest parts, of course, like something 20-30 miles. But we talk about the narrow parts. So both sides try to observe what is going on another shore, and if they can hit the other shore, if they see like military movement or any other movement which looks suspicious, they can send a drone, an FPV drone, or something like that. So when you walk around, you hear distant explosion, and that was my case, and you just know, okay, like maybe the next shell will come and hit me, so you don't need to walk around, because otherwise you can find out. But the question comes, what to do now with this former great reservoir and with this great media? Because what happened in let me say what happened in June last year, when in June last year the Novakhovka water reservoir disappeared to exist, stopped to exist. Many believe that this area, this huge area, 3 times Lake Constance, will remain inhabitable. Like nothing will grow up there, because like just like it's a huge territory. How can you put seeds on all this area? Like it will stay empty. And people believe that when water went down, this whole area will remain just huge, like square of mud. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. When I first visited this great meadow in last September, I was absolutely surprised by how green it is and how much smaller trees are to be seen there. Like you stay at the shore in Novakaterynivka, south of Zaporizhia, and you look around, you stay on the shore, which is about maybe 10-meter high, and you see this flatland, and it is all green, and it's not grass. It is like about 1.5 meter high trees. How did it happen? And it was actually some sort of luck in a tragedy that the Russians have blown up the Novakhovka Dam in June. Because what happened in spring? In spring, a lot of trees which stay along of Dnipro River and channels and small rivers, they produced millions, billions of seeds, and all these seeds they fall down into the water, and the water came to Khovka Reservoir, and of course, like on one point or another, these seeds go down, and in a normal situation, they would have never grow up in any tree because they will just lay for years and years on the water, and some on one day they will decay, or the fish will transform them into something, or mollusks like crayfish or something will just eat them. But in June, in a warm time of the year, the water disappeared and all these seeds were still intact. And they were laying on a wet mud, absolutely fertile after 60 years of being the bottom of a water reservoir. So the seeds had enough water, enough of fertile soil, and they had time and they had sunlight. So they started to boom, they started to grow, and now you have a real forest there. Like it's small forest, maybe like 1.5 meter, 2 meter. These simple trees which normally grow around the water reservoirs, but it is covered by some sort of trees, and that means that there is no erosion anymore. And people believe that the ecologists or the agricultural experts, they believe that in some years new trees will appear, more sustainable, more powerful, and it will be a forest. And then it will be question up to Ukrainians what they want to do is that. Do they want to have a national park? Do they want to have a part of this soil as agricultural land? Do they want to reestablish some fish farms there? Because during the water reservoir time there had been fish farming there, but now they still have like some lakes on this flat land, so they can have some fish farming, etc. We don't know it yet, but the area is indeed very interesting, and if it will remain mostly as a forest, it will be the largest forest in Central Europe. Once again, 3 times more square of Lake Constance, and it is amazing to see how it will function. The problem there in that region is, of course, landmines and luxes, like unexploded ordnance. And when you go around, you see there are remains, so there are buildings which have been hit by the Russian artillery or by fighting. There are remains of burned tanks or IFVs or trucks, and there are all around the signs about the mine danger. Like you may not enter some fields. You just stop. And when I talk to the city council of a small village there, and the city council consists of 3 women in age of about like 25 and 35. The village has lost about like 60% of its population during the Russian occupation and then fightings, etc. And they said like they started to discuss with me the questions of demining, like how they need to demine the fields, how the farmers localize the landmines or artillery shells, how they call the army, so the army could remove this shell. And they discussed it all in a normality tone, as if it was the part of their life forever. And that was actually, on one hand, it was a great sign that they know what to do and they know how to restore normality. On another hand, it was a terrible sign because you see how easy the war comes into our reality and remains there. Because everything they could talk about was about how to demine the fields, how to repair the destructions. Or, for example, when they discuss the plans of children's music or some other event, like to bring children some Christmas mood. The first thing they discuss in what village they do it, not too close to the front lines, so the Russians could not hit this area with artillery or with missiles or with drones. And that is actually a pretty nasty situation when the first thing you think about when you organize some Christmas party for your kids in your village, then you think first about in what part of our pretty large community we organize it so the Russians will not hit our kids with artillery. That is terrible. And you see a lot of destruction there, a lot of destruction. The that was like the part of the Kherson. If you once again, if you have your questions, please write them in your chat. I will try to answer them. So they have, of course, the infrastructure problems there. Like 1 year ago, they had the water supply from the water reservoir. Now the water reservoir is gone, and all normal water supply systems don't work anymore because they don't have water. So what they do is they revive older water wells, which were from the pre-water reservoir time. So these water wells come deep enough to the water horizons, which existed before the water reservoir time, from the 19th century or early 20th century. They clean them, they enforce them, and they install new supply system for the village. So the city manager told that they install like 11 or 15, I don't remember, but it's more than 10 new water wells where every person can come and can get water which they can drink or use for other purpose, and this water of good quality, so you can really drink it from the well. And of course, for those like who insist, they can organize supply of water in bottles. And that is also very interesting how the community revives and reinstalls the basic infrastructure for the survival. So then I came back to Kyiv, and of course in Kyiv the question was like, what comes next? Like how people leave? What will come with the mobilization? Because the Ukrainian army needs to replace hundreds thousands of soldiers which are fighting on the front line, and many of soldiers they are volunteers. They have volunteered early the full-scale invasion in March, April, May 22, and they didn't calculate for how long they will stay in the army, how long they will fight, because nobody said that the war will continue for the third year. And now many of them are tired. Many of them say, okay, like I have invested my part. I spent 2 years in trenches. I lost my friends. I lost my health. Even if people are not wounded, their health is severely damaged by cold weather, by inhaling of smoke, by stress, by other things. Like just think about the trench feet when you walk all the time in the wet shoes, and your skin starts to release from your feet, and you can get like up to amputation of your feet just because your feet are always exposed to cold temperatures and moisture. So many of these people want to go home, but the army cannot let them go home because they don't have replacement, because not enough people volunteer. You see advertising on the streets of Ukraine, also in Kyiv, volunteer to that army, to that brigade, and some brigades they make advertising for themselves, saying like our brigade is the best, we have the best tradition, morality, the best commanders. You can just like go straight directly to our brigade, and you are sure you get like to the best unit you can have. But it's not enough. So in the Ukrainian parliament, there is discussion. What should they do with the mobilization? And the general mobilization is not what is very popular in Ukraine, like in any country. Like nobody wants to be conscripted and go to the front line, with where the chances are high that you get killed or injured. But many understand that it is inevitable. If you want to fight this war, you need to replace at least some of the soldiers. And then, like, you can hear interesting discussions when you walk in the streets or you sit in cafes and listen to what people are saying among each other. And I've encountered, for example, a group of three young females. We were staying on the street crossing, street light, and while we were waiting for the green to cross the streets, I could listen what they were talking about. And one of these young females, which looked like absolutely like hipster like, she said that she has nothing against that women should be conscripted and she would be conscripted too, because she said like it is what is equality means and to what everyone should do for their country. And that was very interesting to listen that, or to hear that from like in the center of the capital in Ukraine, from a street chat of like some random group of young people who were probably coming from like some event or cafe or university meeting. And that shows that the Ukrainian society really understands deep in their heart that they they need to go further and to sacrifice more. I'm really very sorry to say that, that this sacrifice should be equally dispersed to equally distributed to all the parts of the population. While once again, you have people who want to escape the conscription, who want just to get out. And every day, like, you have news that somebody wanted to cross and board the river, but it was too cold, and this young male could not cross the river and was saved by the border police, and now will be charged with actually with very small, like monetary fine, like $30 or $50 for an attempt to cross the border without permission. But that shows very different aspects of how this problem has been discussed in the society. And of course, nobody wants to be a person in the politics who introduced this law of the mobilization, and the like everyone tries to push the responsibility to another party or to the army, saying yes, it is what the army wants from us to introduce. And then General Zaluzhny comes, the supreme commander of the Ukrainian army, and says, "No, it wasn't our decision how much we need to mobilize. We just say we need soldiers, and it's up to the politics how the soldiers get mobilized, etc." So it is an interesting tug of war in the political sense of who will be the face of this necessary but unpopular legislation, and how it will be wrapped in what technical assistance from the West and what weapons. And here we come to another part of the discussion, which I wanted to touch during this hour. And please, if you have like your questions, please comment, or please ask them via the chat, and I will try to answer them. But another thing is the security treaty between the UK, United Kingdom, and Ukraine. And this is a very interesting thing, because today the Prime Minister of the UK, Mr. Sunak, came to Kyiv, and he was celebrated in Kyiv. He held his speech in the Ukrainian Parliament, was celebrated with standing ovation. because the UK is really one of the most important allies of Ukraine and provide Ukraine with necessary equipment as one of the first nations, even before the full-scale invasion, and stayed with Ukraine up to now, and provide Ukraine with long-range missiles, Storm Shadow, which are extremely effective against the Russian military objects. And today, Mr. Sunak visited Ukraine, and he has not only confirmed and reconfirmed the pro-Ukrainian course of the British government, but also signed this treaty on the security cooperation between Ukraine and the UK. Why it is important? This agreement foresees intensive 10 years long cooperation with Ukraine, which can be prolonged after these 10 years, or can be expired, or not expired, can be replaced by NATO membership of Ukraine. And this agreement, this treaty says very clearly that the United Kingdom will provide Ukraine with weapons. And sorry, in particular, this treaty foresees delivery to Ukraine long-range missiles and tanks and other equipment which can destroy the Russian defense. And that is extremely important because, for example, what Germany delivers to Ukraine, and Ukrainians are really thankful for Germany, for what Germany does, but Germany delivers mostly air defense systems and some other equipment which can be used on the front line, but doesn't have enough firepower or long-range firepower, especially to destroy the Russian defense, the Russian warehouses, the Russian infrastructure, etc. And the United Kingdom focuses on exactly on this firepower, and they stress it in the treaty. The treaty doesn't foresee any concrete numbers except of the overall number of military support for the next year, 2.5 billion, and the number of infrastructure support also over, I think, over 2 billion. But it doesn't name any special weapon systems or numbers of weapon systems, etc. But it says that this agreement can be expanded by agreements with certain like institutions in the UK, or can be a fundament of development of new legislation. So here we clearly see a very massive agreement which foresees delivery of a lot of firepower for the Ukrainian army, but not only. It foresees cooperation in cyber defense, in reconstruction of Ukraine, support of infrastructure reconstruction of Ukraine. It foresees British activities in pushing Russia to pay for the destruction in Ukraine, like confiscation of Russian funds, sanctions against Russia, and also foresees the UK's commitment for the NATO membership of Ukraine, which is also very important. So here I think that an extremely important step has been done, and such agreement is the first one which has been signed between Ukraine and a major Western player. And as President Zelensky said today, if such agreement had been signed in 1991, the Russian invasion hadn't happened, or at least had a lot of problems. Russia would have had a lot of problems with its invasion because this agreement is really strong compared, for example, to the Budapest memorandum. Emir writes here, the Brits have been great. Boris Johnson was out on the front foot well before even the Americans getting us laws and javelin from Europe. And further, he writes, it's time for Scholz to free the bulls. Yes, I totally agree. The government of Boris Johnson, despite all the internal questions which the Brits have to their former prime minister, I don't interfere in this internal political discussion in the UK. But what Boris Johnson did for Ukraine was absolutely amazing, and I think that none of the other countries could compare to the UK on the scale of the support and the quality. Maybe the Poles were as quick as the Brits and also provided a lot of equipment, but the Brits have provided the equipment which was absolutely unique. And Boris Johnson is really a person which Ukrainians adored then, and I think adore now. And he's really a very popular person in Ukraine. And regarding our German Federal Chancellor, Mr. Scholz, as a German citizen, I cannot understand why the German federal government is so reluctant on the topic of providing Ukraine with the Taurus missiles. And I cannot see any logical explanation of this reluctancy. I can see like some quasi-religious beliefs that this delivery can cause some bad consequences for Germany, but there is absolutely no logic behind these beliefs, and it is really sad to see that even the parts of the federal government, like the Greens or the Liberals, who used to be pretty effective in pushing Scholz to deliver, for example, Leopard 2 tanks. Months ago, 1 year ago, actually 1 year ago, that these parts of the federal government have decided to remain silent after the Leopard 2 have been delivered, and now don't pressure Scholz at all regarding the delivery of Taurus, despite the fact that over 50% of the German citizens say that Germany should increase the level of its military support for Ukraine. So the German people really stays behind Ukraine and really demands from the government more support here. So it is like really a mystery of Mr. Scholz and his reluctancy. If you have any other questions to discuss, please write them in the chat. Otherwise, I think we can wrap this discussion up, and then like we can say that actually like most of the questions have been discussed, and we have touched the question of Avdiivka, we have touched the question of Kherson, we have touched the question of Kyiv, mobilization, even the internal political discussion between Zelensky and Zelensky, and now the treaty on security cooperation and security guarantees between the UK and Ukraine. So if you have any comments or remarks or questions, feel free to write them in the chat. Otherwise, I think I can wrap it up. It was really great pleasure and privilege to have this live chat. Okay, Emmer is asking, will you be having Gustav Gressel back anytime soon? I hope so much. I hope so much, and I will. Actually, I wanted to write Mr. Gressel a message these days, like after I come back from Ukraine. He is indeed a great person, one of the most clear minds in the Central European military analysis, and a very brave person who openly speaks on important things, not trying to escape the consequences of the criticism or from the people who don't see it as clear as he does. So he's really a great person, very clever mind, and person of integrity. So I think we should have Mr. Gressel soon on our podcast. And yes, if you want to support the 47th Mechanized Brigade of Ukraine, because we will not stop providing the guys with the drones and with other equipment, you may find the donation link on my Twitter. You also may open the web page of our think tank. It is European Resilience ORG. You can see it in the chat. You will see our donation campaigns there and the ways to donate. for them. You may also see the ways to support our day-by-day work, like with Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. Not only the campaigns per se, but also our day-by-day work. Feel free to do it. Really highly appreciate it. And yes, the next question comes from Mr. Car Records. There are rumors of a stop of shelling, a defeat of Russian forces in Avdiivka. Do you know something about this? Can you please explain what do you mean on the defeat of Russian forces? You mean that the Russian forces have been completely defeated in Avdiivka, or what? Please concretize and parallel. I will try to answer this question as much as I have understood it. Avdiivka, I'm not sure if you have visited this video or you have already been in this video when I described the situation around Avdiivka. And Avdiivka is former town, like now mostly destroyed, with like several dozen thousands of population, and respectively dense structure of buildings, shops, garages, banks, police stations, etc. So it made the area a pretty good area for defense, because you have a lot of structures, you can hide, you can have observation points, etc. And they had the Avdiivka coal plant. And the coal plant is a large structure with a lot of concrete buildings, a lot of steel, a lot of underground facilities, a lot of higher buildings like towers, observation points for the railway transport, etc. So this made the defense of Avdiivka, exactly as defense of Bakhmut or Marinka, a pretty good bargain for the Ukrainians. Oh yeah, I see. No, I would not say that shelling stopped. I've been in Avdiivka on Saturday, Sunday, and one can hear shelling pretty much, I can assure you. But the Russians could not take Avdiivka. And when I was talking to the soldiers there, you see that they have these 24 hour shifts at Avdiivka coal plant. So they go there, they defend the area, then they come back, they sleep, the next soldiers take their place, etc. So the fighting is still there. The Russians still try to take Avdiivka, and it is obvious that Vladimir Putin wants to get some more names of the Ukrainian cities conquered. Actually, they took ruins, but conquered before the so-called elections in spring this year. So Putin could just proclaim his military operation, as you say, a success. Like they have taken Marinka, they have taken Bakhmut, now they take Avdiivka. Nobody knows in Russia where it is, but everyone knows that it is a sign of a great military mastermind of the Russian lead. So the Russians continue to attack. It is actually good for the Ukrainians because the Russians attack there where the chances on success are very low. So the Russians just lose tanks and manpower, etc. You have some districts in Avdiivka where you have over 100 of battle tanks just staying in the forest, burnt down. Over 100. And that is really incredible. The Russians have lost around Avdiivka more tanks than any European army has. Any single European army has less tanks than Russians have lost around Avdiivka. And they still continue to come, and the Ukrainians continue to neutralize them. Does it mean that the Russians have no chance to take Avdiivka? No, it doesn't. Theoretically, the Russians can push more, they can bring more manpower. After the so-called elections, Putin can declare like new a mobilization wave. He may just conscript another 200,000, 300,000 people, low quality soldiers, demotivated soldiers, soldiers with health problem, alcoholism, you name it. They try since months mobilize people of other nations. Ukrainians capture more and more foreigners on the front line from all possible countries, Somalia to Pakistan, Nepal, Brasilia, like everything. The Russians issue student visa in Southeast Asia countries like Nepal. When the people come to study to Moscow in 1 month, the Russians say them your visa will expire soon and you will be deported back to your country. But if you want to have indefinite residence permit, go to the army, Russian army, like spend 6 months on the front line and you will get indefinite residence permit. The Russians make the same advertising, like get a Russian citizenship after 1 year of service in the army and fighting in Ukraine. So the Russians really try to tap the new sources of manpower, and the soldiers like being captured, they sometimes completely disoriented, they don't speak even Russian or very broken Russian. There is a question how these soldiers get controlled by their commanders, because the Ukrainian experience is to have, when they have foreign volunteers, they have a homogeneous language unit, like all people from South America serve in, for example, in except Brasilia, of course, in a Spanish-speaking battalion, or people from Canada and the US, an English-speaking battalion, and there is like a German-speaking unit or Russian-speaking unit. And that is how the Ukrainians do it. They have the commander of this battalion who speaks Ukrainian, but the commander talks to his soldiers in their native language. The Russians, as far as I know, don't have like Somalia or Nepal or Brasilia battalion, but they have soldiers who lived in Russia for some time and speak broken Russian, so they install them. They put them into like different units, but as far as I see, like the success is not that great. So yes, and but that means that Vladimir Putin tries to find new manpower and tries to save the people from Moscow and Petersburg, of two biggest cities in Russia, like two real profiteers from the Russian dictatorship on economic means, to save them from dying in Ukraine. So he tries to tap to poor people from the province, or foreigners or prisoners, etc. But I think that Putin will still be able to conscript after his so-called elections, to conscript like some 100,000 of people, and they will, of course, they will throw them into the front line and try to push through the Ukrainian defense. If Ukraine will manage to hold Avdiivka, I'm not sure, but Ukraine can always push back step by step to another fortified position. And if we calculate the ratio between the Russian success on the field and the Russian losses on the field, the Russians have captured during this campaign since summer 22, the Russians have captured 0.1% of the Ukrainian territory. 0.1%. And for that 0.1%, they have paid about 100,000 soldiers' lives. Like, that is incredible numbers, and that is absolutely unsustainable. And yes, and I cannot imagine for how long the Russians can do it if Ukraine gets, for example, enough of long-range missiles or jets, or a permission to hit Russian military bases with these long-range missiles, Russian military bases on the territory of Russia. So that's why the soldiers in Avdiivka had a very positive mood when I spoke to them. They said, okay, like, we are doing our job and we don't see for the Russians any chance for strategic success. So they can come and we continue to kill them and kill them. Which is of course not the lifestyle any person wishes, but in a case of war, it is actually the best situation when you pay very low price for very high losses of the enemy. So coming back to the questions, yeah, Amir is right. I think the Avdiivka troops have been relocated for the attack on Kupiansk. That can be because the Russians always try like to bring soldiers from one part of front to another part of front. But it doesn't mean that they have completely abandoned the idea of taking Avdiivka. Do you have updates on the current development in Moldova, especially regarding Transnistria? Well, I haven't seen like anything huge there, but the situation in Moldova and in Transnistria always remains tense because the Russians still control the so-called separatist government of Transnistria, de facto the Russian proxy, and the Russians have their influence, their economic, military, security, and of course the Russians have their influence in Moldova itself with the pro-Russian parties, and they tried already to organize a coup in Moldova early the full-scale invasion in summer 22. And of course, they haven't abandoned these plans. The problem for the Russians, and good for us, is that the Russians have completely lost control over the most parts of the Black Sea. Most parts of the Black Sea. They had to relocate their fleet, their Black Sea fleet, to Novorossiysk on the Russian east bank of the Black Sea, and partly to Abkhazia, to Russia occupied territory of Georgia, Sakartvelo. And that means that the Russians cannot support the Transnistria operation from the sea. What Russians do from the Black Sea, they can launch cruise missiles, naval-based cruise missiles against Ukraine, but they cannot operate in the western part of the Black Sea. And without Black Sea control and without the land control in Odessa region, and Russians will never have that control in the foreseeable future, uh, any operation in Transnistria can only be failed. Like they can try to organize a coup in Moldova. I would say in this case, the Ukrainians will just help the legitimate Moldovan government to restore peace in the region. And I cannot see how Russians can support this coup, which they will try to camouflage as revolution or something, to be successful. So I don't think that Moldova and Transnistria can be a real problem for the next time. But of course, the question remains with Russian drones flying through the airspace of Moldova, Russian drones flying through the airspace, a cruise missile of Romania. We know that it happens regularly. We know that some drones even fall on the Romanian territory. NATO still doesn't react on that. And that is really a problem because every time we let the Russians violate the NATO airspace in Romania or in Poland, as it happened many times, we actually encourage the Russians to push more, and we provide the Russians with an illusion that they can attack NATO without any consequence. And that is a very dangerous thing because as soon as Russians believe they can attack someone without consequence, they attack you. And the moment when we let the Russian drones fly through the airspace of Romania, that was the case when the German interceptors located in stationed in Romania as a part of NATO defense mechanism, they took to the air, they accompanied these drones, but they haven't got an order to destroy them, so they just let them transit the Romanian airspace and attack Ukraine. It was a very bad sign. It was a very bad sign. It was a very encouraging sign for the Russians and very bad sign for the NATO. Then let's move to the next border, Belarus. Silence since Wagner coup. Do you expect surprise from this Ukrainian neighbor? No, I do not. Like Belarus was extremely important for the first phase of the full-scale invasion. The Russians decided to attack Ukraine not in 22, not 21, but in 22, exactly after the preparation to the invasion in May 21, when they realized that stationing the invasion troops only along the Russian-Ukrainian border is not enough. They need to attack Kyiv from two sides, from Belarus and from Russia. And for Alexander Lukashenko, it was a very big victory, as he only provided territory for Russia, but didn't send his troops into the war. So for him, it was always a guarantee that he can pull back and say in The Hague that he was manipulated, he was forced to provide the territory, he was occupied, but the Belarusian army didn't participate in the invasion. I think he was thinking about The Hague from the very beginning. So the rumors about that the Russians will try to repeat this Kyiv invasion, they came in the year 23, but I don't see how it is possible, because the territory is now heavily mined. The Ukrainians are well prepared for fighting back any invasion. The Ukrainians have quite another weapons. The Ukrainians have quite another military experience. And if that invasion failed in February 22, there is no chance that it will be successful in, let me say, February 24. So what I expect is that the Russians will try not to conquer more land, but to hold what they have now and try to push the United States, Germany, and other major players into the illusion that Russia cannot be pushed militarily from these territories, just to convince the U.S. administration or German Chancellor that what Mr. Schorep is saying constantly, or that some German experts or so-called experts, I don't call them experts, like self-proclaimed experts, say that Russia cannot be defeated, Ukraine is too weak, we need to like freeze the conflict and then reach some deal, and then Putin will stop and we will get out of this war. This idea is extremely dangerous. It will bring nothing. The Russian forces will just be rebuilt for the next attack. I don't mention the fact that the Ukrainian population on the occupied territories will continuously be exposed to all possible terror, which one can imagine. And I have recently translated and published a summary of an interview with a Ukrainian prisoner of war who spent 9 months in Russian captivity. What he describes is absolutely uh, terrible. It is unhuman. It is the level of torture in the Gulag or in Auschwitz or in some Japanese death camps during the World War II, etc. Constantly beating, hunger, executions, mutilation of prisoners of war, torture for fun, rape, and this is what will continue to happen if we let this conflict, this war freeze, and which is worse enough, which is bad enough, but which is much worse is that this will help the Russians to stockpile ammunition, to buy new missiles from North Korea, Iran, to build new tanks, to train new army, to develop new plans, to buy more Western politicians, to install more subversive missions in our governments, to prepare for cyber attacks on our defense systems, to buy our experts, to buy our defense engineers, and to prepare the next attack. That is the worst thing which we can allow happen, and that is not what may happen. So that will be the Russians' idea, the Russians' hope, to keep what they have, to subvert the West, and to prepare for the next attack, not to just reach some huge effect now, because if they could not conquer these regions in 22, they will not be able to do it in 24. What they need, they want to weaken Ukraine and weaken the West, and then look for the next chance to attack. But I hope that Ukrainians will not let them do it. On the Black Sea, Maluk just announced a new super drone for taking out the Kerch Bridge that is even bigger than the Sea Baby drones called Kozak Mamai. The Ukrainians are very creative in producing drones, extremely creative, and sea drones is their their absolute domination domain. I don't know any other nation which has that much development of sea drones. And it is interesting that actually the Black Sea is ideal for using drones, because drones are never about control of the sea, but about interdiction. Like, if you have drones, you don't really control the sea. You cannot like attack the seashore. You cannot land your amphibious troops there. But what you can do, you interdict the others from doing anything. And sea drones are perfect for contained waters, like areas which are limited by geography. You cannot use drones or drones which we have now in like Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, because the distance is huge, because the waters are tough, because the you need to have like a lot of fuel to reach storage, etc. But in the Black Sea or Baltic Sea, it is ideal. Like, sea drone is practically a clever cruise missile. And for the Ukrainians, it was important to push the Russian fleet away, to stop the Russian fleet from attacking the Ukrainian targets, to push the Russian fleet from Zminy Isle, to push the Russian fleet from the grain route. And they've done it perfectly. Like, to stop Russian fleet operating from the harbor of Sevastopol, or like from Feodosia and Kherson. They've done it perfectly. Like, drones are about destroying the targets on the sea and interdict, to prevent the enemy fleet from operating in the area, and the Ukrainians have done it. And of course, like any weapon, sea drones are tending to get more powerful, longer distance, more explosive, better quality, more modes of operating. Like, the Ukrainians now saying they develop the drones which can submerge. So they don't only go on the surface, they can submerge and attack from underwater. That is another step. So if you, let me say, produce a sea drone which can submerge and which can carry like up to 1,000 kilogram of explosive, uh, that will be amazing. Like 1,000 kilogram of explosive submersive, like ability to submerge, operation radius of, let me say, 500 miles, 800 kilometers, and you control the Black Sea completely. There is no chance that the enemy will dare to have their navy vessels out of the harbor. And that is actually an absolutely new level of naval warfare. That is interdiction par excellence. It is absolutely great, and I'm pretty sure that the Ukrainians work on that. Not to mention all the Ukrainians left in the hell of Ruski Mir, as you said. Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. Like, Ruski Mir is this Russian ideology of cultural dominance and extermination of other cultures. Like, we know that the Ukrainian prisoners of war were forced to speak Russian. We know that people with tattoos of Ukrainian symbols, like the trident or something like that, they got their hands amputated with these tattoos, or they got their parts of skin cut out. We know that the Ukrainian soldiers have been captured, and on their phones, the Russians found, for example, the patriotic songs, or that these soldiers visited Maidan in 2012. These soldiers got either extra tortured or executed. So for the Russians, it's about the extermination of any sign of Ukrainian identity. And those people who demonstrated their loyalty to Ukrainian identity, they get executed. And that is what they do on the occupied territories. They destroy Ukrainian libraries, they destroy Ukrainian monuments, they install their monuments, they rename streets, and then they take kids. And they take kids, they brainwash kids, they send them to military drill, camps starting from the age of 5, 6, and then they produce like perfectly brainwashed generation of children. And we need to understand that the Russians think in longer distance. Like they say, okay, like maybe today we don't have superiority on manpower, but now we kidnap like 100,000 kids or 200,000 kids, and in 10 years it will be like 200,000 18 years old soldiers, completely brainwashed. And they costed us nothing, they say, because we have taken them, kidnapped them. So we don't even pay for their raise during like the first like 8 years of their life. But in 10 years, we just send them into the front and we don't care if they die. And that is what the Russians are doing. That's why it is so dangerous for us to let Russians stay in the occupied region, because they will just digest the population there and use the resources, economic and demographic, to start a new war. Okay, I think that we are already talking more than an hour, and we have jumped to other topics. Uh, I think we need to wrap up now. If you don't have like any other questions, I'm very sorry for the problem with the sound in the early of this broadcast and with the link. I promise to do my best to do it correct way when we'll do the next broadcasting, so it will not repeat these problems, but the interesting conversation will repeat, I hope. And yeah, thank you for all the interesting information, especially the Kakhovka plan with all the historical findings and also how nature takes over so quickly. Yes, I was absolutely amazed. I was absolutely amazed. Like, I've been there in September, as I said, and I've been there now, and it is. I have nothing to compare it with. Like, it is absolutely, absolutely amazing, and I hope so much. Like, after this war ends, that we will be able to enjoy like long hours, long hiking in that area, because it is an absolutely unique area, absolutely unique. We have nothing compared to that, especially because of how much of history have been preserved there. Once again, like, you walk like 100 meter, you find like artifacts there just laying around, and that is amazing. Thank you so much, and have a great day, have a great evening. Once again, if you want to donate for the 47th Mechanized Brigade, have a look at my Twitter account. There are these links with the brigade, with the donation links, or visit the webpage European Resilience org. I will write it now once again in the chat. You will find there the links to donation campaigns. You will find there links to support our day-by-day work, like Buy Me Coffee or Patreon or PayPal. And stay with Ukraine. And I hope that we will be able to see some good events in the next months, as General Zelensky promised, and as I'm sure every one of us wish from all the heart, and we do what we can do to let it happen. Thank you so much, and have a great day. And thank you for spending this hour in this live broadcasting. Have a great day.